Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Dr. Donna Bowen. I have been a student of Keith Larson since 1981. He and I continued to keep in touch while I was away at school, while I was at various universities teaching as percussion faculty, and then I ended up here in 2013. Was teaching at Mid-American Nazarene University, and then of course he left in 2016. So our last conversation was just this last February. We've been in touch throughout this entire time, and just been keeping in contact with him a little bit and finding out what he's doing. And he also always wanted to keep in touch with me, and you're going to hear a lot more about his commitment to his students today. So we are here to celebrate Keith's impressive influence, teaching generations of musician percussionists. While we can read his bio, identifying him as an educator, composer, performer, author, and music director with 50 years teaching total percussion, both the musical and technical aspects of percussion instruments, and its personal impact that draws us together today, the life-changing conversations, the humor, the holistic and lifelong commitment to each individual student, the laid-back engagement with the ability to inspire excellence. And let's not forget those incredible snare drum chops. That snare drum roll as smooth as glass. So today, you'll have an opportunity to hear several of Keith's original compositions, as well as a few of his arrangements. We'll reminisce about his career as an educator and have the opportunity to share some memories. So I want to thank Kevin Clark, Jonathan Westcott, and the Kansas City Youth Percussion Ensemble, along with Evan and Linda, and several other people who have organized this memorial concert today. Also, thank you to Blue Valley Church for providing the space for this event and for providing the live streaming and recording that is making this available to Keith's family, his friends, and students in North Carolina and across the globe. So our first selection is Tempest Black. It's a percussion ensemble piece for 7 percussionists, and it was commissioned by the Shawnee Mission North-South High School Band under the direction of Steve Adams. It was published in 2011. So this piece focuses on the musicianship, not just the technical aspect of being a percussionist, as it depicts a Kansas spring thunderstorm. So, Kansas City Youth Percussion Ensemble, Tempest Black. So as we go through our concert today, I'm going to share a little bit about Keith's educational background and just where he was and what he was doing and trying to piece it all together. Of course, I wasn't here with him the whole time, but I've had a lot of great conversations and just catching up with a lot of people and hearing their stories and how Keith has impacted their life. So Keith is from Pottstown, Pennsylvania, which is northwest of Philadelphia, and he studied with William Shinstein. And for those of you maybe a little bit older, you may recognize that name. William Shinstein was a very prolific composer, arranger, and percussionist who was highly influential in the percussion world. And so Keith started out his musical career studying with him, and then he went to the University of Alabama, and he went there to study music, and that's where he met his wife, Brenda. She was also there to study music, and Brenda actually grew up in this area. So Brenda is from Olathe, Overland Park area, and I believe she went to Shawnee Mission South High School. And so after she graduated, they both came up here. And they moved to Olathe, and Keith started teaching percussion lessons. I believe it was probably in about 1980. And he was at Funk's Music in downtown Olathe. That was where he started when they first moved here in 1980. And we'll continue this story in between each of our next pieces. The next piece that we have a soloist for is titled Marimba Vignettes. And this is a solo marimba work. It's comprised of 6 movements. Each of these movements can be performed as solos, or it could be combined in any way. I've done concerts where I've done 3 or 4 of the movements at a time. It was published in 2011, and this piece is dedicated to his wife, Brenda. So Tom will be performing. Where's Tom? There's Tom. Tom will be performing this piece, and he's going to share a few words about Keith.
Hi, again, my name's Tom Fabing. I chose percussion and stuck with it because I'm usually in the back, so bear with me on that. When I was thinking, actually I'll introduce myself first. I'm from Gardner originally. Currently I'm in the Army Band at Fort Riley, as well as the Salina Symphony, still a percussionist, still music doing that full time. And I studied with Keith from 2011 to 2016. Mom, right? Yeah, okay, just double check. Thank you. As you'll hear, when I was thinking about things to say, I promise I'll try to be as brief as possible, but it's very difficult because I think about him constantly, even if I'm maybe not actively thinking about him. He had such an impact on my life and how I learn, how I even teach my current and former students, had such a great impact on that. So I tried to narrow it down to 2 main things. Empowerment and work ethic are the main things, and I'll share a few details on each of those that I had a personal impact on. So the first thing, how he empowered me, total percussion was kind of the lingo, and that means just well-rounded percussionist, not just a drum set player, not just a marimba player, not etc. Right? And he really emphasized that in all of our lessons. That being said, if you wanted to learn, go out and learn. He empowered you to do such a thing. Like, you could, he made you, maybe I wanted to play snare drum a little more than other people, right? That's probably true. But he empowered me to do that, as well as made me a total, well-rounded percussionist. I'm so grateful for that. Because he had the skill set and the knowledge to do so, just because he was so experienced and so passionate about what he did. He was able to do that, and that's very unique in the percussion world, to have somebody so well-rounded at teaching those aspects. I have kind of a story with that. I don't know necessarily why this sticks out to me so much, but I was probably in 7th grade, and it was KCYPE. He asked me to stay and play like with the older group, and that was like a really big deal for me. Partially, do you remember the maroon shirts? Remember the maroon shirts? I thought those were so cool at the time. I was like, that is, I get, because we just had to wear the concert black. Oh, I get to wear the maroon shirt. That's sweet, right? Among other that, I mean, that was the first moment he trusted me. I think it's so important to have an adult other than, of course, my family is so supportive of me, but an adult other than your immediate family telling you, yes, you can go do that. Yes, you can, like, that is so special and necessary. And thinking back, that I'm just so grateful that he was that for me. Um, the second thing I mentioned was work ethic. I owe that so much to Keith. I thought I knew how to set the bar, but no, his was always higher than mine, and that just consistent throughout our, the lessons and ensemble, whatever. It was always high, always setting that higher. Um, he would give praise, and he would call you out when you needed it, right? I mean, as many of you know, his praise was maybe not bad, or that's better than last week, but that's so. I looking back on that, I really love how and I teach that way too as well. Like, he was able to tell you. It wasn't just always, oh, that was good, that was good, that was good. No, because you don't get better that way, and I really learned that from him. It was very, very special relationship we had. And he treated me with respect, and he was like an adult almost, and he shot straight. He didn't, beat around the bush with what I needed to do to accomplish. Okay, so you want to do state band. Okay, great. Here's what you're going to need to do. Ooh, that's tough. That's a lot of work. Okay, well, that's what you're going to need to do. Okay, I'll do it, right? Or if, maybe, how much did you practice this week? An hour every day. I promise. I'd play it. All right, how much you practiced this week? It's like, that was your second chance to tell him the truth, right? Because he could tell there is no hiding from that. And he just constantly pushing you to be the best percussionist you can be. And I just take that aspect, not just in percussion, just in life. I've really, looking back, especially thinking about all the things I've done in my life, I take that same idea that Keith taught me, and I just, in every aspect of my life. And I think he'd be proud of me today of the work ethic I have, and I owe that a lot to Keith. I'm wrapping up here, I promise. Finally, all my past and former students, I can assure you, Keith's words and live on through that, and whether they know it or not. I'd often tell stories. He left such an impact on me when he told me he was leaving. I think I cried in the car after every lesson until, if not in the lesson, it was just it was scary, but obviously I was handed to Kevin. I was fine, but so important. I mentioned he wasn't necessarily too sentimental with me, but he had his ways of showing that. One very important thing he gave me was there was these Cooperman 24 fast stick for the percussionists, right? He used to use these every lesson. I was like, oh, those are really sweet. I want a pair. I don't think they make them anymore, right? Yeah, no. But he used those like on the practice pad every lesson, and I think it was our last lesson, if not second, whatever. He gave those to me, and I think that was his way of, just saying goodbye in a way, and not bye, but we're gonna move on. That's okay. And even though they're mismatched, they're still my favorite pair of sticks. I love them. Made my left hand a little stronger, But I'm so thankful for that. I'll always keep those forever. And yeah, I think that's all. I appreciate you all for being here. Thanks to everybody for setting this up, and I'm so honored to play today. Thank you.
As I said, I first met Keith in 1981. I was looking for a percussion teacher, and I was previously only studying piano and drum set, and was looking for someone who would teach me all the other percussion instruments. So he immediately showed me how to play four-mallet marimba, since I already had a piano background. And then he started talking to me about pursuing music as a career. And I was like, what is going on here? Because I had other plans. You know, I was going to do something else. I was already a junior in high school, already making other plans. And he just kept talking to me. Started talking to my parents as well. I'm sure many of you have had similar experiences. And in November of 1982, he took a group of us students to PASIC in Dallas, Texas. So we drove down there, and I was blown away. And if you haven't been to a Percussive Arts Society International Convention, you are missing out. So I would encourage all of you younger percussionists to go check that out. It's always in November. Go check it out. It'll change your life. It was so amazing. I was hooked. And so I pursued music as a career. He had me working on a piece, a four-mallet piece, preparing for college auditions, and it was a manuscript that he had written. It wasn't a published piece, and it was titled Sweet Mexicana. So I was playing Sweet Mexicana before it was even published, and these college these professors were hearing it for the first time when I was playing it for my auditions in the winter and spring of 1982 and 83. So ultimately, I actually ended up going to the University of Alabama. So I got to study with a lot of people that Keith had also studied with. So that was also really cool because I was seeing all of this history with him, and of course then I also had lots of high expectations placed on me because I was one of his students. But anyway, so Sweet Mexicana, it was published later in 1983 by Southern Music, and it actually remains a staple in the four-mallet repertoire. It is still on numerous state solo and ensemble lists, and it's still being purchased today and performed today. You can find a lot of YouTube videos of that piece. So Evan and Mason are going to share playing that piece. It's a three-movement work. Evan's going to play the first and third movements. Mason will play the second, slower movement. And I believe they're going to be sharing a little bit about their experiences and memories of Keith Larson.
Thank you. My name's Evan Maslak, and let's see, I went to Keith when I was 12 years old in 2002 at the 95th and Antioch location, for those of you that know. And I still play today. I play and teach full-time as a career, and I have no doubt that I would not get to do that had I not met Keith, hands down. But I remember going in for my first lesson. You walk down these stairs, and there's just this room, and I was going to be a rock drummer. I didn't know what a marimba was or anything, and my parents had enough sense, like, hey, you need to learn some other things, and they took me to this guy named Keith. And I just saw all of this stuff crammed with no rhyme or reason in this small room, stacks of sheet music, and it was just a vibe like none other. And that alone was so cool. I never learned Sweet Mexicana from him, but I always heard about it. I never even played the piece until I started teaching my own students. But he used to talk about it. I remember particularly when I was a sophomore in high school, me and some of his other students were going to go to a marimba camp in Texas. And his sense of humor was dry as a bone. Like, I can't even replicate it, but he's just like, yeah, I'm famous in Texas. And he'd roll his eyes. And I'm like, really? Like, are you, he's like, oh yeah. And he's like, I was like, why? Like, I wrote this piece, Sweet Mexicana, and yeah, the royalties buy me a steak dinner once a year, Which, yeah, with how royalties work, that might be true. I don't know. That might be about right. So I'm like, okay, so I go to this camp, and the other instructors, where are you from? Kansas, Keith Larson. Oh, wow. Like, you study with Keith Larson? I was like, yeah. I'm like, okay. And then one of the other students was playing for the class that day, and he was playing Sweet Mexicana, and that was the first time I ever even heard this piece, because you couldn't quite look it up on YouTube or anything like that yet, right? So he plays the piece, sits down next to me. I was like, man, that was really cool. Keith Larson's my teacher. What? Like, no, he didn't believe. It took me about 5 minutes to convince him I wasn't pulling his leg. And I think at that time, at the end of that week, I was like, wow, like Keith is like really special. I mean, I already had known Keith for a while and loved him and everything at that time. But that was when I really started to kind of understand his reach beyond just being like a local Kansas City drum teacher, percussion teacher, I should say. But he was a personal mentor to me. He invited me, when I was going to UMKC, he invited me to start teaching at his studio, and this would have been over off Strangline, off of 119th and Strangline, about. And it was my graduate school after UMKC was sitting in the lobby every single day with Keith for a couple of hours and just talking. And he would, we'd talk about teaching, talk about percussion, talk about the news, whatever. Like, we would talk about anything, and there was always a lesson or an anecdote or something special wrapped into each one of those conversations. And, I think I knew it at the time, but it was really, really special, and I'm so thankful for it. And he's in everything I do, and all of my students have probably heard me like laugh at randomly in a lesson and be like, I gotta tell you this thing Keith would have said, So even my own students have kind of heard about Keith Larson, but every time I teach or play, kind of like Tom was saying, like whether I'm actively thinking about him or he's just in there somewhere, it's so true. And I really think he wanted to get to know you. Like at the front of everything was pushing you to be a better player. He could be tough, we all knew that, right? But he loved you and he wanted to make you better. But I kind of learned when I was teaching alongside him a little bit, he really wanted to get to know that individual special person that you were, so he could help you the most. Many people have used the word empower, that's it. He would be a little bit hard on you to get you to kind of work and realize what you needed to do, but in the background of all of that was him caring about you and wanting you to be the best version of yourself as you could be. So that's a lot of what Keith really meant to me and continues to this day. I'm going to hand it over to Mason now.
I really should have gone first. How dare you? Hi, everyone. My name is Mason McBride. I started studying with Keith in 2009. I was just entered middle school, and it was to the point where my parents were realizing quickly that I needed some better lessons to really learn more about this wonderful world of percussion. And Keith was a personal recommendation from my band director at the time. And I went into my first lesson with Keith at the Strangline location, and like Evan described, got a little tour of the place, walked into the back warehouse, and saw this ocean of gear and instruments and crazy stuff that I had no idea what it was at the time. And Keith looked at me and said, "You want to learn how to play all this?" "Yes." "Good. Now come in and shut up." I was with the KCYPE and studying under him for 6 years. I graduated high school in 2015. And at that time, you know, the last couple of years I was with the KCYPE, Keith really, to play on Evan's point here, empowered me, not just with what he was teaching me, not just with the music we were playing in lessons, but also with leadership and teaching me how to, it sounds simple, but how to work with other people in an ensemble, how to play together, but also how to lead a group of peers and see a project to its completion point. When I was a senior, there were two things that he did for me that really shaped not just what kind of musician I am, but I like to think what kind of person I am. The first was when audition time came around. We had a long conversation, took an entire lesson just to chat about what I wanted to play to prove my value to these colleges as I was going around trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. And at the end of that conversation, Keith had me choose 3 or 4 pieces to play. And before that, I was very used to just going in and him telling me what to play and I would work on it. Never had that kind of agency before, where he's like, "All right, you find a solo." And I'm like, "Okay, you have options?" He's like, "No, you find it." I'm like, "But where do you find it?" "Okay." So I went and found a piece called Evergreen by Ben Finley. Now, if those of you who don't know it, go home after this, look it up, it's fantastic. But that was the first like serious 4-mallet piece that Keith and I really drilled down on. We worked on that piece for months. And it was because he had the trust in me as his student to make a decision and then see it to its completion. Now the second thing he did was, this would have been spring semester, so coming up to my last concert that I performed with the KCYP before I graduated and moved out of state for college. I had been working with a friend of mine on making a percussion ensemble arrangement that we wanted to play with the KCYPE. And Keith thought it would be a good idea to let me conduct, which I had never done before, and had no idea how to run a rehearsal. So there were many times where I would be in his office before or after a rehearsal or a lesson and say, "Keith, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to conduct a group of people. I don't know what to listen for." He's like, "Well, you know the piece, right?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, I helped write it." "Cool. Make them know it." "Well, what does that mean?" He's like, "Okay. How is it most effective when I teach you guys in the ensemble?" I'm like, "Well, you really just try to make sure you don't do this." Give him that textbook look that everyone knew. Everyone knew. You get that look from across the room in the warehouse. You're like, ooh. But he told me to trust myself. He told me, "You know what you're doing. You know what the music is. They don't. Help them know it the way you do, and then lead it." And now, after 6 years worth of college and moving back here, everything that I do, everything musical that I do, from, you know, symphony orchestras, ensembles, solo stuff, everything has its origins in what Keith taught me. And I see all of the students here in the KCYP now and friends from years past. Everyone in this room has been touched in one way or another by Keith's influence, and that is just the most special thing. So thank you all for being here, and let's play something before we both start crying.
All right, so continuing down memory lane a little bit here. So by around 1988, I believe, Keith had his first Drum City store location. And he also had a studio there, and that was in this little storefront on a frontage road off of I-35 near East Santa Fe, 135th, kind of behind all these car dealerships, kind of hard to find. And it was just, I remember walking in there and you couldn't see anything except piles of drum sets stacked all the way up. And there was this little bitty path that went around to the little desk where he was sitting, counter where he ended up sitting behind. And you could find your way back to the rooms where the studios were. And so I taught there a little bit when I was between a couple of my degrees. And that's when I think John Cushon also started teaching lessons in his studios. And then he got a much bigger place, Drum City, where we really remember seeing Drum City near I-35 and Santa Fe or 135th in Claiborne shopping area. I don't know if any of you guys remember that, but that was actually a real store. I mean, you felt like you were really going into a drum store. It all had all these really cool drum sets, all the cymbal stuff, and tons of studios. And this is when, in addition to John, I was teaching there. Well, I had all the little kids. I was starting all these little kids off. And then, of course, Keith had the bigger studio, but Rocky was there, Buck McLeod, Brian Busby was teaching timpani for a while. I mean, so it was like this really big, this was the total percussion thing going on. And then, you know, I went off to get my doctorate, but they continued on for a while. And then, as you alluded to just a little bit ago, he moved to that basement studio with Harold Steinhardt at 95th and Antioch or somewhere, right? And so I think between approximately 1993 and 2008, he was part of that Harold Steinhardt Studios at 95th and Antioch. And then by 2008, that's when he moved to Strangline. And that studio in Strangline, that's when he started the Kansas City Youth Percussion Ensemble. And that's when he really grew this program back. Not that I think it was not big, but it was such a confined space. Like you said, Evan, going down those stairs. I feel like every time I walked down those stairs, I only visited a couple of times. I was out of town, and I remember thinking, I'm gonna fall down these stairs and break my leg or something. It was like this really tall set of stairs. So anyway, he's back at Stringline, and he started the Youth Percussion Ensemble. And you know, as I've talked to a lot of people, especially in the last few days, across the board, and you've heard already from several of them, the memories that were shared went well beyond the technical skills as a percussionist. He was about getting to know the whole person. And so the people that I've talked to, they are describing Keith's natural ability to draw out their musicality and their passion to follow their dreams. So it wasn't just, okay, learn this technical passage, try and put some music into it. It was, no, I want to help grow you as a person, as a musician, and bring your whole self to this. What is your passion? What is your whole self as part of this experience making music as a percussionist? So repeatedly, I heard the phrase, I would not be where I am without Keith's positive influence. And I think we're hearing that again and again and again today as we're hearing people. I would not be where I am without his positive influence. I did a 360-degree turn in my career path from my junior year to when I went off to college. Totally different college, totally different career. Worked 30 years in higher education as a percussionist and administrator, and so much of that is credited to Keith's commitment to just listening to me, speaking into my dreams and my goals and my ideas, and help giving me direction in those formative years. So he also, as was mentioned, he's a great conversationalist. He could talk about anything, and he always encouraged all of the students to be involved in everything they could find. You know, it was about like experience a wide variety of ensembles and ways to make music. And so he, as I said earlier, he talked to parents. He'd help the kids really communicate with their parents, or at least help communicate for the students. Hey, this student's really talented. They really have a passion for this. You know, this is what I see can happen. And so I think many of the students of Keith's, you know, ended up becoming career musicians, career percussionists, music educators. I know several of them are music educators. Some are even like that were studying with him when I was also studying with him back in the early 80s. I've talked to a couple of them, and actually a couple of them are also retired, but they were educators their entire career, music educators. So his influence is present all across the country, and through his students' love of music that is continuing to be passed on. We're hearing this from each of the people who have stood up here already, that he is continuing to be present, and his love for music and commitment to growing others is present. So at this time, I'm going to be playing one of his two chorales. He published the two chorales in 1983. I'll be playing that second chorale. And then this will be followed by a brief opportunity to share a memory of Keith, if you so choose. I'll only have time for maybe a couple of people, and we do have a recorded message that we'd like to share with you as well. So first, this is the second of two chorales. So at this time, I do want to play that recorded message for you. This is someone you'll recognize right away, who also sharing a little bit of their experiences with Keith Larson.
Happy heavenly birthday, Keith Larson. I met Keith Larson playing a church service sequence out in Olathe or Lenexa, I believe. And he told me about this concept called Drum City, where he wanted percussion teachers to teach each of their best disciplines to the students, and the students would rotate. It was Rocky Neal, double bass drum set, John Kashan, drum set, who became the music director for Alita Adams and husband, Keith himself on mallets primarily, Brenda Larson on mallets as well, Mike McKinley on Latin percussion and all hand percussion, yours truly on timpani, and Scott Colson on the front desk but also taught. It was an amazing concept that was well before its time. But Keith was an amazing player, an amazing visionary, and an amazing human being. And he's still making a mark even now. This is Brian Busby saying, thank you, Keith, from all of us.
All right, is there anyone else who would like to say anything? This is an opportunity if you'd like to say something. I'm going to have you come up here so we can be on the video here in the sunlight or in the spotlight.
Hi, my name is Adam Dean, and I go back with Keith way back to 1992. And quite simply, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today had it not been meeting Keith. I teach music education. I'm an elementary music educator in Wichita. Work in the 259 school district, Wichita Public Schools. And I also I'm part of an 80s cover band, and I do most of the bookings for that. It's called Sputnik. And working with Keith, I'm struggling on where to start really, and I don't want to take up too much time, but what Evan and a bunch of others have said of the stories, I mean, Keith was a great conversationalist, and he truly was interested in getting to know the person. It was teaching you how to play whatever piece in question. That was only just part of it. He wanted to make sure that he tapped into the real you and got you truly connected to what you did. He always taught me the importance of being a total musician. Not just a total percussionist, but a total musician. And percussion is just one of the tools that we use to express ourselves and everything. And I miss all those conversations with him. He always had a great dry sense of humor. Turned me on to PDQ Bach, lots of other great recordings, and I miss all of that. When he moved to North Carolina, I always thought it would be great if I could just take a couple of days just to go and surprise him, kind of like I used to do when I was on college break. And unfortunately, that never happened. But it's just, I will miss all of that very much. I was very close with him. I very much considered him a second dad in many ways because I could talk with him about anything. And Keith, miss you, and we're all here for you. And thank you very much.
Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Deb DeMars. My daughter and her former KCYPE percussionist are sitting back there and she's cringing. Our daughter played flute in middle school. She was really great at it, but she didn't love it. And even her instructor said she doesn't love it, but she's really good. So before 7th grade, she decided that she wanted to, in the summers before 7th grade, before 8th grade, she decided that she wanted to play the related group of instruments called percussion. I mean, she did read music, so, you know, it was something. And one of Keith's students, Matt Lepley, Matt and his brother Pete were both students of Keith's, but Matt Lepley was a year older than Sydney, and so got in touch with him and said, hey, would you teach her over the summer? And our church had a full percussion section, which was great. And our church agreed to let them have lessons for, like 5 or 6 weeks in the summer, every single day. So she could go into 8th grade, at least being able to hold her own at some level. And so when we finished with that, and she was ready to go into 8th grade, I said, okay, so now, I mean, he was in high school, so, you know, he couldn't teach her all the time. Where should we go? And he said, I wouldn't go anywhere except to my teacher, and that's Keith Larson. So I called Keith. You know, it was an experience. And he was at the studio at 95th and Antioch, and it was down those creepy, really steep stairs, and it terrified me that when we left Sydney's lesson after she started taking lessons, it terrified me that it was gonna take him a while to close up, get ready to go home, and he'd be by himself. Because those stairs were creepy and the building was creepy. But you know, we got through it, and then he moved to the Strangline location. But when I first talked with him, I know you'll find this shocking, but he was a little gruff and a little grumpy. And that's what I saw first, until I experienced him teaching students. And I saw everything that you all have described in the way that he empowered kids to know that they could do what he was asking them to do. And he didn't say, do it this way. He let them figure it out. And yes, I totally understand the, did you practice, you know, an hour a day, every day for a week? Yeah, no, that didn't happen at our house either. But we did own a marimba, and it was in our living room for a very long time. When Sydney, so she took lessons from him all through high school, you know, went from middle school into high school at Shawnee Mission South, and got to her senior year, and I remember other students who were in, it was right after KCYPE had been formed, and so there were more families and more students that we were, you know, running into and encountering, and I remember hearing things like, Evan's parents, Bryce's parents, Daniel's parents saying, you know, that senior year, he went to his lesson, but I said to him, what did you learn? And he said, well, I don't know, I didn't even pick up a stick or a mallet. Do you remember that? Yeah. And so I thought, oh no, that won't happen. Yes, it did. We paid for counseling services, held in a percussion studio for our daughter's whole senior year. And here's the thing, he never led her to the career she has today. He let her figure it out. When she got to the point where she had to make a college decision and she had all kinds of choices that were, you know, actively pursuing her, not in music, but in other areas, he sat her down and he said, okay, what's important? So he let her figure out and narrow it down to the things that were important to her. And for her, it was mountains and water, and that doesn't exist in Kansas. So he taught kids how to play music the right way and well. And as someone else said, you know, the work ethic, absolutely, 100% the work ethic. Those skills transfer right over into life, what you do with your life and how you pursue the things that are really important to you. And as part of the original board for the Kansas City Youth Percussion Ensemble, there were a group of us who, he was not just our kids instructor, and many of you are probably this way too. He became our friend because we could see the impact that he was making on the lives of our kid. And everybody needs to have somebody outside their family that their kid can trust to get to the right choices. So we miss Keith. We wished him a happy birthday yesterday, and we do miss him.
All right, anyone else? One more, maybe?
Hi, I'm Zaid Gretz. I've been a student of Keith since I want to say 2009, 2010. Now, I didn't personally go the music route. I went more the science route, but I have Keith to thank for just the amount of like dedication and drive to push myself to do what I want. I do actually want to share a story. It actually is a story about how I realized how much impact Keith has had on the community. It was 8th grade. There was a solo competition, you know, where you get the 1, 2, 3 ratings. And I was playing a 2-mallet piece, like second movement of Mountain Something, and but as soon as I finished playing the piece, the judge asked me which high school I was planning on going to. And I told him, DeSoto High School. And he then introduced himself, and actually he's here today. Matt Bradford told me that he was the band director there, and then asked me, you know, hey, who's your instructor? And I said, Keith Larson. And then with the biggest smile on Matt's face, he said, tell Keith I said hi. I went back the next day to my lesson and told him, and then I just said, oh, by the way, Matt Bradford says hi, and then Keith looks down from his music and goes, how do you know Matt Bradford? But I think it was from then on I realized, like, you know, Keith was just more than just like a studio instructor, because like I wasn't aware of like the Drum City, but yeah, after that I realized, like, you know, I had a really special instructor with me, and even though I didn't take music as a career path, music is still always going to be my passion.
All right, well, thank you to all of you who shared. We do have a couple more pieces that we will be playing here today. So I want to share a little bit about the next piece. So maybe those of you who are playing, if you want to go ahead and get set up. Hymn Tune Variations. This was originally written for Blue Valley Church, where we are right now. This is where Keith and Brenda attended and also provided some music for. And so the original instrumentation for Hymn Tune Variations was viola, marimba, and piano. And this piece is a setting of the famous English hymn, Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing. It was published in 2014, and now we've arranged it for mass percussion ensemble. No, it's not really. I think it's, 8 parts maybe. But we do have the Kansas City Youth Percussion Ensemble performing it, as well as several of the alumni that you've seen perform solos, and a few other alumni of Keith's. So this is Hymn Tune Variations. All right, well, as several people have mentioned, in 2016, Keith made a huge change that impacted all of us here in Kansas City, and that is he sold everything to our current director of the Kansas City Youth Percussion Ensemble, Kevin Clark, and moved to North Carolina. So I know lots of you were shocked by this, but it was the right thing for him at that time. He was able to be much closer, in fact, right there with his daughter and her family, and he wanted to kind of try his hand at total percussion in North Carolina. And he actually made a few changes to it and kind of changed maybe a little bit of his focus. So he started with creating what is called Triad Total Percussion, purchased all new instruments there, got studio space, and he actually spent a lot more time performing as well. So he was playing gigs in the area with orchestras, musical theater, and churches, and he was seeking ways that he could continue making a difference in other people's lives. So he sought out students who didn't have the opportunities and the means to experience music and to be able to have lessons in percussion. So he worked with after-school programs. He taught special needs students, and he continued to pour himself into others, similar to what he had been doing here in Kansas City. So Keith was an incredibly talented musician and percussionist. You know, he was a professional, and he could have made his career and his living as a performer, but he chose to teach. He chose to give us and the community where he lived, which was Olathe and Kansas City, and also Greensboro area, the opportunity for his students to discover their talents, their passion for music, and to instill in all of us a lifelong love of music, but also a love of just following our dreams and seeking out ways we could be better people. So he took pride in our accomplishments too. I know every time I returned, he's like, play something for me. What have you been working on? But he took pride in that. And he was always telling me about a variety of students. Hey, this student did this, and this student got this audition, and this student was here. He was excited for all of you. And he really wanted to see others' success. So I'm humbled by his lifelong commitment to make a difference in people's lives, with percussion studies being the catalyst for that service to others. So thank you, Keith Larson. Thank you. So now, it wouldn't be a December concert if we didn't have Christmas music, right? And of course, yesterday, as we've mentioned, yesterday was Keith's birthday. And so as we close out this concert, we do have 2 arrangements to perform. So the Kansas City Youth Percussion Ensemble, you guys can come on back up. And Jonathan, you'll be leading them, I believe, right? In these last 2 pieces. So these are both arranged by Keith. The first piece is Ding Dong Merrily on High. All right. And then after that, I think they'll be playing Deck the Halls. All right, and they are getting reset for Deck the Halls, and I just wanted to remind you that we do have a little bit of a reception out in the lobby. And then also just an opportunity, you can stick around a little bit and share memories of Keith or have conversations with any of the people who spoke and just, kind of reconnect, because I know a lot of us have not seen each other in a while too. So this is the end of our program after Deck the Halls. Thank you for coming.